What's up, creepy boys? It's been a while. I haven't recorded anything in months. I've been hard focused on work, but it paid off. Finally got that promotion. I'm not sure if I'm going to change the channel name or not, but my Twitter handle is now it's still at HTTorviz, but it's I'm Corporal Creepy on there now, so that's extra exciting. I want to share the news, get that out there. It's a big milestone for me, and yeah, I figured I could try to get into this some more because I kind of left it and didn't really explain why, and I'm sorry. But here's a story for you. Oh fuck. That was sent to me by he's a real cool guy I literally just met. Joshua McMahon. If I butcher that, I'm sorry. You guys can find him very quickly at author_Joe_Joe on Twitter. Send him lots of love for helping me get out of my slump. Without further ado, let's roll that intro. My dad was a kind man of few words. Whenever he spoke, it felt like the words he wanted to say were resting behind the words that were coming out. It was always like that for him. When I and my sister came along, he found a job and was gone. A lot. He would work night shifts, and by the time he was coming home, I was waking up and getting ready for school, so I didn't see him much. Even when I graduated high school, I threw myself right into college. A college located a handful of states away from my hometown. Even though conversations with my old man were short and being in the same room was a rare occurrence, I never doubted his love for me. Those words he wanted to say but couldn't. I always got the feeling they existed to benefit me and my sister. He always supported us, and his hard work allowed us to live comfortably. I always thought it was odd that our house was as big as it was, that we never really had to worry about clothes or food. All we never knew was that my dad rode around in a truck pulling roadkill off the side of the road. Never really sat on how that job offered so much in pay, but I wasn't one to look a gift horse in the mouth. My father, unfortunately, passed away 3 years ago. It was a quiet passing, and I was told there was little suffering. Whether or not that is true, I just like to believe it is. We knew the end was coming, though, and managed to get our goodbyes in. That's not something many people get, so I'm thankful for it. The last words he ever said to us. The last time he spoke, I could feel all those things he wished he could have said poking through. I did it all for you. I remembered it. I can still feel those words ringing in my ear. I can remember what my sister was wearing beside me, the scent of her office place dripping off her blazer's fabric. I remember feeling my fingers rub together as I tried to compose myself. As I felt all the things I wanted to say becoming a lump in my throat, those words were so much more than I love you could have ever conveyed. It's been 3 years now. Well, it was 3 years as of yesterday. Not that I could ever forget, but the day was highlighted with a call I thought I was done hearing. It was the lawyer in charge of my father's estate. He had left everything to me and my sister, and up until yesterday, I had assumed we were in possession of that everything. I called my sister, and together we headed to the office and spoke with the lawyer, who handed us a sealed envelope. Under the dim lighting in my kitchen, it felt like the two of us sat for hours staring at the envelope. It almost felt like we would get scolded by our father for opening it, as silly as that must be. With a quick heaving of her breath, my sister reached over and unceremoniously tore open the once pure white container. A few sheets of neatly folded paper sat inside. We took turns reading off their contents to each other. It was our father discussing the details of his work. In the letter it stated that he was under an NDA, one that didn't expire until 3 years after his passing. Rather than try to give you his words through mine, I'm just going to type down exactly what the letter says. My father was an honest man and never one to play any tricks. Everything detailed in the letter lines up with his behavior and schedule. I believe the contents of this letter to be absolute truth. It started, as many things do, with desperation. Watching both of you come into this world was one of the greatest joys I ever had. It is also a day that created great pain. I and your mother never expected twins, but we were ecstatic when we were told you were both coming along. Your mother was incredible, so headstrong I swear she could talk a lion down. Her body, however, she fought as hard as she could to deliver the both of you safe and sound. Her body grew weak in the process, and while I'll never regret having the both of you, it hurt so much to watch the light in her eyes fading. Her star was far too bright for this world, and with that, it was just the three of us. I didn't have time to mourn. She would have hated if I let myself waste away, and I knew I couldn't support both of you on what I was making. So, while trying to raise you both full-time, I looked around for work. I didn't have a job forums or apps that would direct me, just a pile of newspapers and the yellow books. You know that big old book we used to use as a high chair? You probably don't remember that. Your mother's sister helped a lot during that time. She would babysit way more than I should have asked her to. Eventually, I found something I thought would work. It wasn't the prettiest job, and it seemed too good to be true, but I had to take a chance. Buried in some obscure local newspaper was a small section looking for people to clean up local roadkill. The pay was impressive, and the hours worked perfectly with when your aunt would be able to watch over you. It was an overnight job, so I figured she could come over when I left, and I could sleep while the two of you went to school. When you started school, anyways, there were a few years where sleep was pretty rare for me. I answered the ad, and before I knew it, I had gotten an interview. Pretty standard stuff, some mundane questions. I guess I gave them the answers they liked, because a few days later, I got a call back from the company asking me to come in for orientation. I almost felt silly putting on a dress shirt to go clean up roadkill, but I wanted to appear professional, even in the face of carcasses, on my first night at least. The orientation went smoothly. I was taught how to properly remove a body from the road, quick and clean. Leaving something like blood behind can attract all sorts of insects, which attract birds, which attract larger prey, and then you're back there again cleaning another animal up. The person showing me the ropes warned me that the bodies we clean up can get pretty big, and so can the messes. No matter what, it was our job to clean up and leave no trace behind. He asked me if I was sure I wanted to work with the company, and when I reaffirmed my desire, I was presented with the NDA. Right there, and then on the side of the road, under a streetlight, he handed me a clipboard with a single leaf of paper. It was such a bare-bones agreement that my eyes made short work of it. It all boiled down to, don't talk about the job, or you'll lose it, along with other nondescript threats. I'm not sure what normal NDAs looked like, but I signed it regardless. Not like I wanted to talk about the job anyway. Who would even want to listen to me go on about prying Bambi off the highway? The NDA stated it would expire only after I'd been dead for 3 years, so if you're reading this, then I hope you have been doing well. After giving my signature, I was informed we had one more job for the night, and then we'd call it. So we hopped into the truck, and my new co-worker started heading to the job. We made small talk about the job, but the gentleman seemed to keep things pretty vague. When I asked why the job paid so much and why there was an opening, he just told me that most people couldn't stomach the work. I watched out the window as the sprawling sea of trees morphed into a more residential suburb. The house slowly got bigger and more elegant the more we winded through the streets. I figured an animal must have run into the area and gotten hit by a car. Bizarre that we would be called in, though. So far into town and in such a nice neighborhood, surely it could have been handled by someone else. The truck came to a stop in front of a rather large home, one that probably had bathrooms larger than my childhood bedroom. Real fancy stuff. My partner got out of the truck without a word, and so I followed. I looked around the street and wasn't able to identify any animals or the trace of there ever being one. My partner just walked up to the house and knocked on the front door. Perhaps the animal was in the owner's backyard, I thought to myself. I walked up behind my partner as the door opened. A crack of light seeped from the house, wrapping the owner in shadow. The man of the house stuttered out our company's name like he was asking us to prom. A short and gruff yes came from my partner, and with that, the door opened further. Did the animal get into the house? The man stepped back and was no longer cast in darkness. I could see his plush and white robe stained red. A red I attributed to the glass of wine he was sipping in his other hand. I wondered just how much of it he had to drink as I am watching him shaking where he stood, the red wine moving from one side of the cup to the other. He'd even gotten some on his knuckles. He must have been rattled from the animal. Maybe he'd never seen a dead body before. Maybe the thing was still alive, running around. Through shaking breath, the man asked us to follow him. My partner offered me a quick glance. "Let's see if you can stomach it," he proclaimed as he walked ahead of me. I rounded the corner after the two of them had briefly vanished around it, so I was the last one to see it, but they both already knew it would be there. I looked at the fresh red soaking into the plush white fiber carpet, the same shade of red I had seen on the man's robe. It was only then I realized the red wine he was drinking was a few shades too light to have caused those stains. I was the one who was shaking then. My eyes collected more information, my head trying to process it all. The body was there all right. A collection of flesh and bones, all twisted around like an art piece laying on the carpet, only the flesh was pink and the bones were human. Small rivers of blood were still falling through strands of the once pristine blonde hair that laid like cobwebs on the floor. My partner wasn't looking at the body. No, he was giving me the hardest side eye I think I've ever received. He was waiting to see what I would do, how I would react. I knew if I slipped up, those vague warning in the NDA might become less secretive. My teeth were chattering. I could feel the clicking reverberate through my brain, and it rattled my thoughts. I tried my hardest to breathe, become calm again. I thought of you two, and how I would do anything to keep your mother's level of determination. "Quick and clean," I affirmed, returning my partner's gaze, who gave me a quick nod in response. That was that. I remembered everything I had been taught, and we wrapped the girl in a thick tarp and brushed the carpet until it was the same snow white that it had been before. We didn't ask the man questions, and ultimately, we didn't need to. I could only imagine why there was blood on his hands, the blood he probably spent the rest of the night trying to get out of his mind. By the time we left, it was like we were never there. We waited for the man to change, and we took his robe to burn. We disposed of the nameless woman several miles away from the house, fairly deep in the woods. I asked my partner what happened next, and he simply replied, "Nothing." Whether that man was implicated in the girl's murder case or not, we did our part. We cleaned up the body, and that's all we were hired to do. That's how my job got started. There were times I wanted to quit. The NDA never said I couldn't. When I looked at you two and the life I could give you, though, I couldn't resist going back. That position was going to be filled, whether it was me or not. So I continued to do the job, and I did it well. Worked until I could afford a sitter to give your aunt a break, and eventually moved into one of those nice homes I saw on my first day. Since that day, I've seen more oddities than I could possibly fit into this letter. The world is a strange place, full of strange people. I've seen a manic woman asking us to dispose of scorned lovers. I've seen inexperienced wannabe hitmen begging us to clean up their messes. Those were the worst. People who think their life was a movie. Not everyone has the stomach for it, though. Stranger still was the rare cases that humans weren't the culprit. I've seen people on the side roads that hardly resemble a human. The way their bodies were contorted and the various injuries on them. I've seen bones crushed into a fine dust. I would wonder what in the world would cause those kinds of injuries. Always hated when I'd ask myself those sorts of questions. It wouldn't be that long after that I'd get my answers. You wouldn't believe the type of animals I've had to drag off the side of the road. The type you won't find in National Geographic on the internet. Unworldly and ugly looking things. I'm sorry, this letter isn't meant to frighten you. I won't keep going on like this. I just want you both to know I did everything I did for you two. Even if it didn't seem like I was the best of dads, even if you feel like I let you guys down, I loved you both so intensely that I would drive that road the rest of my life if it meant neither of you had to suffer or struggle. Charles and Rosie, be safe out there. Keep your wits about you, and most importantly, know when to speak and when to keep your mouth shut. I love you. I and my sister sat there for a while, and I'm still going over everything he said. Over and over I think about it. What my father must have seen on that road. I can't help but be intrigued by the oddities he mentioned. His letter wasn't the only thing that came in the envelope. The pieces of paper were stuck together pretty well, but once separated, the intent was clear. Keep my wits about me, huh? I think I'll go see those things my father talked about. So I wanted to get this all down now. Get it out of here. After all, I haven't signed the NDA just yet. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. If you like stories like this and want to hear more of them, make sure you check out the other videos on my channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one.